when I create stuff, like designs or whatever, I usually try to make things pixel perfect and really well crafted. But then when that's that process of handing it over to a developer, it feels a lot of things are lost. And it makes me wonder if the tools that we're using, be it like any of the graphics applications, don't feel like they're fit for designing for the web. And like designing in browser doesn't make sense to me. So I mean, I suppose the leading question I'm going to ask is, do you think our tools are fit for purpose?
Well, apart from the fact that I don't really know all the tools that designers have, because I'm really not good at designing, so I don't even try anymore. Maybe I should. I think that is one of the big issues that are definitely there. So I've been working with some designers in the past, and as far as I know, most of them work in Photoshop, InDesign, which couldn't be further away from the web, really.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, so classical page layout, these tools are great for because you have a static visual that you're trying to create. Well, on the web, you don't even know what size your canvas is going to be, and you have to adapt accordingly, and that just doesn't work. And I know that tools like Sketch have gotten more popular because they have a little bit more of a modular approach to design, where you have like things you can move around as a compound and not have individual lines and layers necessarily. But even then, it's still, you end up with a visual, a fixed visual, nothing that conveys animation, like how a site nav comes into the frame when you click it, or how the site is supposed to adapt when the screen size changes.
Yeah.
So designers have, I think, adapted to a point where they usually design the same page like 3 times, phone layout, tablet layout, and desktop layout. But that still assumes that there's 3 fixed sizes, and we have loads of different pixel densities and aspect ratios and sizes and distances to the screen where the user is sitting, and all these things are not very well covered. And I know that, for example, Sketch has a new plugin.
Like resizing and reflowing.
Exactly, where you can basically define anchor points and have a little bit like you can basically resize your design and can define how things are supposed to move around when the screen size changes. So that's a good step in the first direction. But still, most designers that, at least that I worked with, are more familiar with classic print design, and that doesn't carry over well to the web.
I mean, do you find that quite limiting then, like with the outcome? Because you are potentially receiving these static mock-ups, which bear no relationship to the thing that you're going to create, like even just typography. Like sometimes you have to, like for performance reasons, you may have to go with default font typefaces, or like the system fonts. So almost it seems like that process is like there to stroke the ego of the designer rather than the thing that you're actually creating.
It is not necessarily limiting, because in the end I have to make the product work. So I always think that I can strong arm my decisions. I can be like, what you want is not possible, I'll just do it the other way around. But of course I usually think the designs that I get are really good, so I want to make something that's as close as possible. So I think in that case, it is not really limiting, but it's more exhausting, because you have to have much more feedback loops with the designer into, can't do this, what else do you think could work? I can't place the underline in exactly that position because I don't have control over that. All these little bits and pieces of designers have a lot of, they care deeply about making something pixel perfect, and if you don't implement that way, they get angry at you, and then you have to try to make it right again. So that's why I never changed designers that often back when I was a freelancer. I had 2 designers because I knew they had a rough understanding of the web, what is possible and what is not. So the designs would most of the time be fairly reasonable to do. And I would just have to be like, okay, I have to make a compromise here in the size because sometimes the page could be too small or these things. That's a lot of extra work, right? And that is something that, especially at the start as a freelance web designer, is money that you don't earn.
Yeah, cool.
So I think the other way to approach this is if designers would get a little bit more familiar with the capabilities of the current web, what is coming, what can CSS do, what can't it do.
So what do you think about Dash Elements? And what is Dash Elements for designers who have no idea what Dash Elements is?
Well, in terms of design, it's actually a pretty interesting question because there barely is any design at that point. Dash Elements is a project that I've started with Rob Dodson and Monica Dinculescu in December, basically, where we're trying to take common UI pattern elements like an accordion, a site nav, a radio button group, and re-implement them in custom elements, but make sure they are high performance, very flexible, and accessible, which is something that often falls short in UI libraries, that they don't work well with screen readers or just don't have keyboard input at all, or if you take them, you can't style them as freely. So in this case, they're really raw implementations with almost no design attached to them. And I guess the new thing about it is that you're not supposed to necessarily use those, but to read the code. So we have taken the majority of the time to make sure the code is super clear, super clean, very well commented. We actually produce the code or turn the code into a website where you have code and comments side by side, so you know basically for every line why it's there and what it's doing. And I'm thinking it's going to be really interesting for the ecosystem that they will have a chance to see how you can do something that's highly flexible, visually very flexible. Designers can basically say, I want my radio box to look like this and still have all the
benefits of accessibility, whatever.
Yeah, all the marks of performance, accessibility, all these things.
I mean, that's really amazing, because I mean, from a design point of view, we were never really taught about accessibility. And I think when it comes to like the tools that we use to create these things are very boxed in, and it's like, doesn't take into consideration behavior.
Yeah.
So I mean, is Dash Elements is part of the intention to educate?
It's mostly to educate. It's a mixture of educating about how do you do accessibility on the web, how do you do custom elements, how do you do high performance, and how can you achieve all three things at the same time without trading off developer convenience or spending 8 hours a day just on getting the accessibility right. Like it's possible, it's doable, and it's not too much to ask for a developer to make their stuff accessible. That's probably one of the base messages we want to send with this.
Yeah, I mean, do you think, so I mean, the tools we use do feel like inferior. I mean, what do you think would be the next steps for designers and developers to improve that kind of tooling in order to make production or like the final things much more easier, much more streamlined, I suppose?
I feel like, especially right now, the web is at such a fast point, developing so quickly, so many new things.
Like the golden age of the web.
Kinda.
The Renaissance?
Maybe? I don't know, it sounds cheesy. But it's like, it's catching up, so many new capabilities on the web, and Service Worker being one thing.
Yep.
I mean, we've talked about Service Worker for 2 years now, almost, and we're still exploring the patterns and best practices around them. So considering all the other new things that there are, like web Bluetooth and web USB, and I mean, finally having web components on all the browsers and all these things, it's going to take time to have the best patterns and practices that at the end, a streamlined process for using those things is in place. So I guess it's too early to call.
Too early to tell.
Yeah, but I feel like a lot of people spending a lot of time on figuring out how to do things right, how to do, like, I guess I'm one of them now. I'm trying to do accessibility and performance at the same time.
Yep.
So we're getting there.
So it's really the gold rush and trying to figure out, we're still not there yet, but we'll get there eventually.
I mean, we're not there yet. What we can do right now is pretty amazing. And I feel like we have now some apps that are purely on the web that are really, really good and can, keep up with native. And we have achieved it. We are kind of there, but we can also be so much better.
I find it really fascinating every time I do a creative project. No matter how or what the output or the final product ended up being, I just learn so much in the process and I discover so many new things.